Thank you, Dr. Tagles. Welcome, students, alumni, faculty, staff, community members, and family of Kathy Russell. Those present here in person, and also we have folks streaming and watching online tonight, so we welcome you as well. I'm Pastor Jen Rude, and I serve here at PLU as the university pastor. We are grateful that you are here tonight to honor and to celebrate Kathy. A group of colleagues and friends have been meeting to put together tonight's service. From them, I've learned of Kathy's deep commitment to her students, her skill in mentoring, her love of chocolate and beer, her trivia skills, her complexity and multidimensionality, the way she listened carefully, often seeing in others what they couldn't see in themselves yet, and her love of music, religious music as well as local bands, and you'll get a taste of both tonight. As we gather, there is grief, to be sure. You will hear that. And there is joy in what Kathy brought to the world. I'm told she had a sneaky sense of humor, and I think you'll hear that tonight too. Kathy had roots in the Episcopal Church, and so our opening prayer tonight comes from the Episcopal liturgy in the Book of Common Prayer, the Burial of the Dead. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer. O God of grace and glory, we remember before you this day our sister Kathy. We thank you for giving her to us, her colleagues, students, family, and friends, to know and to love as a companion on our earthly pilgrimage. In your boundless compassion, console us who mourn. Give us faith to see in death the gates of eternal life, so that in quiet confidence we may continue our course on earth until by your call we are reunited with those who have gone before. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I'd like to now invite Dr. Joanna Gregson, PLU Provost, to bring a welcome.
My name is Joanna Gregson, PLU's Provost and Professor of Sociology. Of all the transitions we experience when we work together in a close-knit community, by far the most difficult is the death of a colleague. At a university, our colleagues are more than just coworkers. They're the people who are witness to the major milestones in our personal and professional lives, the people who get us in ways people outside of work may not, and the people we learn to disagree with while maintaining a foundation of respect. As I'm sure has been the case for many of you, over the past few months, I've been thinking fondly of the many ways Kathy Russell impacted our campus, our community, and me personally. With her expertise in dispute resolution, mediation, and advocacy, through her classroom innovations such as the Ethics Marathon and Lobby Day participation, and through the gentle but direct way she nurtured and supported students, Kathy taught hundreds of students how to effectively serve their communities. Those students are her great legacy, a legacy that is closely matched by the impact Kathy herself had on communities, agencies, and entire institutions through her own scholarship and practice. What Kathy brought to every interaction, inside the classroom and out, was her commitment to the social work value of a strength-based perspective. Kathy embodied the idea that social work is about empowerment and the development of strength, and she called on her colleagues, including the sociologist standing before you today, to be mindful of the transformative power this perspective offers. Now, I can't introduce a celebration of Kathy without also mentioning the indelible image I have of her, and that's an image of Kathy laughing. I have so many accumulated memories of her beaming with gleeful joy, whether it be regaling me with the latest antics of her beloved cats when we shared an office for a year, or scheming with the Social Sciences Chairs Council to remove an allergy-inducing plant through a project she called Midnight Gardening. 20 years ago, when we were at Joint Department of Sociology and Social Work, Kathy had the idea that we should start the school year with a potluck salad lunch for students and faculty, where everyone was invited to bring a salad bar ingredient. I can still picture the tears rolling down her cheeks when we faculty revealed our contributions and discovered that each one of us had brought the same thing, a can of garbanzo beans. Kathy immediately coined it the official bean of the department. I will miss Kathy's joy, her ever-present wit, and her capacity to problem solve and generate solutions by looking for the strength in every person and every system. On behalf of the university, I extend my condolences to Kathy's family and close friends, to her grieving students, and to the work family and dear colleagues with whom she forged deep and meaningful relationships in her long and distinguished career at the university. She will be greatly missed. We now welcome PLU School of Social Work alumna Laura Inglis, class of '07, to share a few words, followed by a recorded message from Pastor Chris Morton.
The day before Mother's Day in 2004, I received a phone call from PLU Admissions. Now, mind you, Mother's Day is on a Sunday, and this was on a Saturday. So I thought, who in the world works in admissions in a college on a Saturday? Somebody here did. And they congratulated me on my acceptance to PLU and said, your advisor will be Dr. Kathleen Russell. Little did I know how much that name was going to mean in my world, and how much that was going to impact my life. When I first met Dr. Russell, she realized I was a single mom who was returning to school after a 20-year hiatus. And she recommended, due to finances and such, maybe I want to consider going to community college, get my general education stuff taken care of ahead of time. In that moment, she learned something about me that kind of followed our relationship the rest of the time. I told her, I said, I believe God had me come here, so I need to be here, and He'll take care of the rest of it. And she followed with that and said, okay. She accepted it. We began a relationship. Kathy was the first real example I've ever had as a social worker. Through the years, I witnessed and experienced in her the roles of advocate, of mediator, coordinator, broker, manager, top-notch educator, facilitator, therapist, negotiator. She did all of it. She advocated for me one time when there was a situation that came up that I needed to graduate and take a different foreign language, and she advocated to allow me to do what would work best for me. Anytime there was a policy that would interfere with something that was for the best of her students, she would advocate. She displayed her passion for policy and making big changes when she took on the issue of children of incarcerated parents. Does anybody remember when she did that? Yeah. She quickly pulled so many of us students to help out with putting portfolios together. We had a pizza night, and we were all kind of navigating all of that. What she accomplished by doing that was had us involved in some of the research, had us involved in developing a passion for that, educating us about that topic that none of us maybe had thought about before. Kathy was an incredible teacher and mentor during another time when I failed my first statistics test. She pulled me off the edge of the cliff when I was trying to figure out what other career I was going to get, because obviously I wasn't going to pass statistics, so I couldn't get a social work degree. She said, Laura, hold on. We've never had anybody ever have to do that before. They've never had to go that far. And I looked at her with wide eyes and I said, nobody's ever failed statistics? And she goes, no, hold on. That's not what I said. I didn't say that. She goes, we've never had anybody have to change their major because they couldn't pass it, right? I incorrectly believed that I was going to be the first that wasn't going to pass it. Years later, when we were Facebook friends And one of those little things comes through and it says, what's one of the biggest memories you have of me? And she answered, and what she said was, she made a point to say, I remember when you got your first A in stats. So even years later, she remembered that. As one of my first professors, as a returning adult student, hearing the frequent reminder of, if I say something 2 or 3 times, then you might consider that I think it's important and it may show up in a test or show up later. We didn't forget that very many times before I realized that was very, very accurate. We didn't forget because of the way she communicated and the impact that she had on us. I remember clearly when we were approaching our capstone. I can still hear her today. And if any of you were her students, you can hear it too. Put on your own oxygen mask, right? Take your own pulse. She was tough. She was quick to correct us, always making sure we remembered that we were there to learn, to grab, and to make a difference in the world. We frequently and lovingly referred to her as the policy queen. I'm hearing chuckles, yes. And I still to this day refer to her as the policy queen. She taught policy very, very well. She was a social worker, and she cared. There was a situation when I was having an issue in my personal life, and she stayed after class to talk to me about it. And then after I got done talking and we were navigating through it, and she looked at me and she goes, "Don't ever stop talking. Don't stop talking. Don't isolate." So she cared. She made sure. And to this day, I use that in my own practice. Not to mention real life advice. Don't speed in Fircrest, right? And then Dave's stories, because, cats are the best, right? She met her students where they were, and she cared about the different aspects of their life. I think that's one of the ways that she made us friends, right? As we visited or stayed stayed in communication with her when we all went to grad school, she inevitably would ask, "Did you feel ready? When you left us, did you feel ready?" And of course the answer was absolutely. And I remember telling her how grad school wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. And people were surprised at the assignments that we had here in the social work program. You had to evaluate a town and the policymakers and do some of the different things. And I was explaining that to her, and she looked at me and she goes, "We told you you could do it, and you believed us." And she was right. She would encourage us, consistently encourage us, even after grad school, even after we're living our lives, starting our profession. She would meet many of us for dinner or for coffee. There was a situation in which I had a pretty severe illness at one point, and she waited ever so patiently for me to get better enough to come in and see her so she could lay her eyeballs on me and make sure that I was okay. And she was thrilled that I came in to see her. So much of what I learned from Dr. Russell continues to this day. I'm the social worker that I am because of her. She met me where I was. She walked with me. She continued to speak into my life. I could only imagine how many students through the years that she did the same with. There's a legacy that I could only hope to carry on. I hope she knew the difference she made in my personal life as well as my professional life. Thank you, Kathy.
What to say about a friend and a colleague and a mentor like Dr. Kathy Russell? What an amazing person she was, and in my heart still is. Kathy and I met through Associated Ministries. She was the vice chair of the board and part of the interview team that brought me to Tacoma back in 2008. And Kathy found a way of gently entering my life, right? Like, as I settled into the job, she would check in with me, but she was gentle enough and kind enough that I realized this is a very kind person. She cares, and she's showing it. So Kathy became a thought partner, and slowly I learned what a thought partner she was. The depth of character and intelligence, someone who understood the complexity of the social issues and the complexities of religious life and institutions. I learned so much about Kathy, and I won't recount all of what I know about Kathy, but I do want to just say that Kathy brought a lot to my relationship with her, personally and professionally. And Kathy understood, not only from an academic point of view, but from a faith perspective, about the dignity and respect of every human being. And that's why we asked, would you be willing to provide training for our growing staff? Kathy provided that training and wove in some new insights for us around adverse childhood experiences and the trauma that we experience in our childhood and what that does to people who are experiencing homelessness and being asked to tell their stories. That secondary trauma, that re-traumatizing. It was very powerful. That's just one anecdote. But Kathy was always kind in the way that she shared herself, her insights, her knowledge. She was amazing. And she had that sense of humor, right? You all know what I mean. Those mixed metaphors and up short. The way in which she just told stories that you knew were really trying to gnaw at something, but she was coming at it a little indirectly. Or the music that she did in that course, the protest songs that she would ask students to write, and then she would write the song for herself. She'd write her own protest song each time she offered that course. She brightened up every time she told me, this is the semester I get to teach this course where I get to do the protest songs. It was amazing, a lot of fun to be around. Kathy and I were trying to get together when I was visiting Washington back in, I believe it was June of this year, just before she died. We had been texting, trying to find a date and a time, and she finally said, I can't make it. I just don't have the mobility, and I'm in too much pain. And I was reading a book, In Defense of Kindness. If you haven't read it, you might try it. It's written by a Presbyterian minister who was a moderator. And I'm opening up an envelope. This is the letter that I was writing to Kathy. My last text was asking, what's your home address? I've dropped her off at her house I don't know how many times. I knew where it was at first. I just didn't have her address. So on June 13th, I wrote this note. I haven't looked at it since, so I apologize if I get emotional. But here's what I wrote to Kathy. I've been looking forward to coffee or a meal with you now that I'm in the Pacific Northwest for a couple of weeks. I hope it'll work to get together, but if not, this trip may be in July. I wanted to write to you to thank you for your kindness. Not niceness, but kindness. As I'm reading In Defense of Kindness, you come to mind as someone who is kind, who accepts that each person is created as a complex human being and treats each person as such, knowing that acceptance includes affirming and challenging, appreciating and calling them on their BS. I've appreciated that about our relationship. Thank you. I will miss Kathy, but Kathy will always be with me.
Good evening. My name is Laree Weiner, and when I came to PLU in 2006, Kathy was one of the first people I met. And she would come and open her mail at my desk, and we would talk. The first reading this evening that I'll be doing is from the Christian Scriptures. It's the book of Romans, chapter 8, verses 38 and 39. And it's something that I believe Kathy knew deeply. For I am persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Kathy also enjoyed all kinds of music, and I hope that you will also enjoy hearing from one of her favorite bands.
It's a humbling honor to be here tonight and honoring Kathy. My name's Billy Stoops, and this is Leanne Trevelyan, and we play in a band called Junkyard Jane. And we knew Kathy. We knew that side of Kathy that was talking about earlier with the beer in the bar and sitting at that table cheering us on. And she became a great friend and a fixture at some of the open mics around town, that she would be so supportive of the musicians. And we're all, as musicians, we have very fragile egos. But she had a way of, no matter what your talent level was, she had a way of making you feel like you were the greatest songwriter in the world or the greatest singer in the world. She had a way of holding you up and making you feel like you mattered and like the song mattered. And to us, that's what does matter, is the song. And we're going to do a couple of her favorites tonight. And and there's going to be that empty chair at every show now that I'm going to see. Miss Kathy. So Leanne's going to start things out.
I'm going to start out by saying, besides beer and chocolate, she evidently liked spinach and gin, because I was looking at Kathy's last two Facebook posts, and they were the 30 best spinach recipes and the 25 best gin cocktails. So I'm not sure if that's a pairing, or not, but we should find out. I'm going to start with a song. I'm a songwriter myself, but I am doing a cover song because I know this is one of Kathy's favorite artists. His name's Jason Isbell, and this song is called If We Were Vampires. The long flowing dress that you're in, or the light coming off of your skin, the fragile heart protected for so long, or the mercy in your sense of right from wrong. It's not your hands searching slow in the dark, or your nails leaving love's watermark. It's not the way you talked me off the roof. Your questions lack directions to the truth. It's knowing that we can't go on forever. It's likely one of us will spend some time being alone. Maybe we'll get 40 years together, and one day I'll be gone, and one day you'll be gone. were vampires and death were a joke. We go out on the sidewalk and smoke, laugh at all the lovers and their plans. I wouldn't feel the need to take your hand. What if time running out were a gift? I'll work hard to the end of my shift, give you every second I can find, and hope it isn't me that's left behind. It's knowing that we can't go on forever. Likely one of us will spend some time being alone. Maybe we'll get 40 years together. Someday I'll be gone. Someday you'll be gone.
It's okay to applaud or, make noise.
I was actually going to say it's not the first time that people have not clapped during the performance. Kathy's up there clapping.
So we had, both of us, Leanne and myself, had the opportunity to work with Kathy as mentors for her students when she would do that songwriting project that she would do. And it was awesome and very humbling. And as you know, we consider ourselves songwriters and write a lot of songs. But when you in that class, it was a little intimidating. Some of the stuff these people were coming up with. The students were coming up with stuff that was like, wow. I mean, there were some incredible songs that they were putting together, and we got to help those grow. And it meant a lot that she would respect us enough to ask us to be part of that. This song I'm going to do, I never got to play this live for Kathy. She got to hear it on a live stream, and she wrote me a note about how it meant a lot to her. And so I'm going to do it tonight. It's a song I actually wrote about my grandkids. Strong and fine, of will and mind, speaking truth, what I see in you, wild and free, to do and to be, dark and brave. There's nothing in your way, and I'll forever be a part of you. In everything that you do, always. Wolf and moon, a love so true. It's what you are, my shining stars. Hometown plans, Paris, France. Hold your dreams. You are what love means. And I'll forever be a part of you. In everything that you do. Always. Dark night moon and a warrior wolf, untethered minds in an open book. Strong and fine, of will and mind, dark and brave. There's nothing in your way. And I'll forever be a part of you. In everything that you do. Thank you all. I love you, Kathy.
Thank you so very much, Leanne and Billy. I heard a lot about you from Kathy, and I am so deeply moved by your sharing. Thank you for opening your hearts, sharing your gifts in this space. Thank you. I'm Pat Roundy, and I am honored to speak as well. I have known and worked with Kathy for close to 25 years, and we became friends. We who gather here tonight, in person or virtually, we're privileged to be a part of Kathy's life and to witness her life's work through her everyday activities. Within the first year of her arrival at PLU, I asked Kathy to serve a term as a faculty assessor in the AURA program. Long time ago, AURA stands for Accelerated Undergraduate Reentry for Adults. Through AURA, students 30 years of age or older wrote a portfolio of prior learning, successfully pursued initial coursework at PLU, and received a variable amount of credit for learning acquired through life and work experience. Each portfolio was evaluated by 3 faculty members, and they were trained in portfolio assessment. Kathy was a natural for this type of work. She understood in her bones how to connect with people in transition and help them know that they belonged. She could readily recognize transferable learning and skills as demonstrated in a given portfolio, and her standards for awarding credit were high. Kathy excelled in student interviews, asking questions which further showcased applicable college-level learning. Kathy was highly respectful, friendly, and of course put students at ease. She reinforced for them the significance of their learning and focused on strengths. It was amazing truly to watch Kathy in action, her deft approach, word choice, tone, analytical ability, and sparkling sense of humor. In yet another area of university service, Kathy played a pivotal role in middle college and later in the Challenge program. These programs provided identified students with a bridge to college in the summer prior to beginning their first year. Kathy approached her work with students with genuine curiosity. She wanted to get to know them as individuals, and in so doing, she fostered trust. She listened carefully to students, facilitated their sense of belonging, and helped them make choices consistent with their life goals. Students knew they could be real with Kathy, and she was highly regarded. Kathy was also bold in analyzing programs and had an uncanny ability to see gaps within systems. When she urged changes, she did so with grace. That said, Kathy was insistent when she deemed it appropriate. Kathy and I served together on the Dispute Resolution Committee, and I marveled at her ability to think on her feet, ask tough questions, and simultaneously reassure participants that the process was fair to all involved and that they could, perhaps, find common ground to resolve their dispute. Kathy never put words in someone else's mouth, yet through rephrasing and checking for accuracy, she assisted participants in recognizing multiple viewpoints. I conferred recently with my longtime supervisor and mentor, Dr. Rick Seeger, about his memories of Kathy. Rick particularly emphasized his admiration while watching Kathy facilitate mediations. She was a highly skilled practitioner, bringing good energy and uncommonly accurate insights. Rick added, "Kathy is one of the finest people I ever worked with." Throughout these experiences, Kathy was a risk taker. Where others might throw up their hands at the exhausting complexity of issues and needs in the community, Kathy brought powerful and sustained leadership. Again this evening, we turn to Kathy's role as president of the board at Associated Ministries. Kathy felt called to be of service not only at PLU, but also in the community. It isn't possible to quantify the amount of time, thought, and energy which she freely gave at AM. At AM, Kathy joined others to create programs to assist so many individuals and families in crisis because they were experiencing homelessness. That's the most important thing. But beyond this, she positively impacted city and county government. As citizens, indeed as people, we owe deep gratitude to Kathy. Her lasting legacy at AM continues to this day, so we thank you, Kathy. Yours was a ministry. Thank you, friends at Associated Ministries, for your ongoing work. I conclude by sharing excerpts from what I wrote directly to Kathy in her memory book. Kathy, yours is a truly remarkable career, and you are very special to me. I'm astounded by your ability to discern underlying themes and articulate those themes with great clarity. In conversations, you quickly and accurately get to the heart of the matter. In considering complex social topics, you explore the root of issues, often offering an historical perspective. You refer to policies and proposed policy revisions as appropriate. In addition to this amazing analytical ability, you're highly creative, even visionary. You likewise approach teaching with an openness to possibility, for example, students creating their protest songs. What a brilliant way to invite students to inhabit new ways of seeing and connecting with others. Lest we become too serious, you brighten days by sharing your marvelous sense of humor. Thank you for finding humor in so many situations. I wrote, "I look forward to our continued friendship, Kathy. Thank you for your leadership in our community throughout the years. Thank you for your heart of service and a life of fulfilling your vocation. And so we, as we deeply mourn Kathy's passing, may we be moved to live out our own vocations through the choices we make and our way of being in the world." It is a great blessing to me to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jody Keller, and this is David Simpson, and we represent the social work department where Kathy spent 21 years. In fact, for the past several years, until Kathy and I retired, the three of us were the social work department. I had the pleasure of working with Kathy during her entire 21-year career at PLU. She joined the department at a critical time. In the years immediately prior to her arrival at PLU, we had revised the social work curriculum and course sequencing, and we had developed an application process for social work. We needed someone who could both further develop field education, which is considered the signature pedagogy of social work, and could strengthen the connections with the Tacoma-Pierce County community. Kathy was absolutely the right person for the job. She definitely was a big picture person with a vision of what she would like to see and a broad plan of how to get there. Our styles complemented each other well as we worked together to build the social work program. One of the first things she wanted to do when she joined our faculty in 1999 was to tackle the social work mission statement. So we called together members of our social work advisory committee who were social workers, professional social workers in the community. Kathy, with her skills at facilitation, just facilitated this marvelous process, and we emerged with our mission statement, which is the one that we still have currently. She made other contributions to the curriculum, innovative things like the protest songs that you've heard about, case presentations, which also linked social work with the community. So similar to what happens in agency settings, our senior social work majors presented a case from their internship to a small panel of peers, faculty, and social workers in the community. Another contribution that you've heard mentioned was the ethics, first called marathon, and then we thought symposium sounded better, so we changed it to the ethics symposium, where seniors in their last semester, along with all of the faculty, discuss professional ethics in every single social work class they have for an entire week. Kathy and I further refined this symposium and presented and published on this teaching approach. Kathy also was instrumental in securing a third tenure track line, so there are 3 in social work now, and in us becoming a department rather than a program. So those were the ways she really contributed to the development of the social work program and department at PLU. But what I will miss most are the small things. The conversations, whether over coffee, lunch, at a conference, on the way to and from Lobby Day. So for the students, alumni who are here, Kathy and I would always, we didn't really ditch the students, but at the end of Lobby Day, we would stop at Anthony's and eat lunch, so in Olympia. Or on the bus going to Seattle to see the Dalai Lama. Yes, the Dalai Lama came to Seattle, and yes, Kathy and I took the bus up to hear him speak. Or just conversations sitting in Kathy's office. We had wonderful conversations about current events, politics, ways to strengthen the social work program, ways to support individual students who may be struggling with something. Kathy had tremendous insights with that. Or just talking about what was going on in our lives. And so I really appreciated those conversations. We also discussed such deep, probing questions as whether spiders really do crawl in your mouth while you're sleeping. And we came back to that many times because it was troubling for both of us. So I enjoyed in Kathy's office, and those of you who know, seeing her rubber duckies all in a row so that she could say definitively that she had her ducks all in a row. She also had a pig with wings that she could pull out and say, yeah, when pigs fly. So her humor came through in lots of different ways. Someone mentioned the mixed metaphors. I think it was Chris Morton. She did intentionally mix metaphors in amusing ways, my favorite being, you buttered your bread, now lie in it. So just get the visual. And she often, and I know a number of you know this too, mentioned the merits of having everybody wear a broccoli rubber band on their wrist, and you could just reach over and snap it when somebody needed a little reminder of something. And Kathy was fearless, able to take on big challenges, and you never wanted to be on the receiving end of her looking over her glasses at you. Do you all remember this? We also exchanged small gifts, usually involving chocolate. She had a way of finding the best artisan chocolates around. And in our house, we still talk about the chicken salad she brought over when we were moving into a new house. My husband, Bill, still says it's the best chicken salad he has ever had. So those are the things I will miss, the little conversations, the thoughtful moments, her humor, her warmth. And yes, Kathy will be missed. David.
Hi. As Jody mentioned, I'm David Simpson, another one of the faculty members here in the social work department at PLU. And I'm honored to have known and worked with Kathy. She welcomed me into the department 6 years ago when I was relatively new to teaching and helped shape my career as a faculty member here. She helped me to be a different kind of social worker, where I made the switch from being a clinician to a teacher. Kathy always had time for me. Whether I needed guidance about the department or how to address a certain concern in the classroom. She provided me with comfort, a supportive ear, and as we've heard, a lot of humor. She was always there to congratulate me when I had successes too. What I admire most about Kathy was her ability to see the whole picture and process all the different ways to approach a problem. She had a knack of finding solutions that usually benefited everyone involved. And when I became department chair, I could always count on her for her guidance, support, and wisdom. I was always impressed by Kathy's ability to enter the classroom and just start teaching. She had no notes and just walked over and started. Her wealth of knowledge about social policy and macro social work practice astounds me to this day. She had such a passion for these areas in social work education, and this passion was clear when watching her interact with students. I witnessed Kathy engage students to think critically about the role social policy played in their work and become advocates for the clients with whom they would work. She would allow students to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, particularly as they worked on the Proset song in the first policy course, which we've heard a lot about today. To do this, she brought musicians into the classroom to help write these songs and to think about the music. And when the students were completed these songs, she encouraged them to sing them for the class. I remember she and I talking about this assignment every year, and it floored her with the creativity that students brought. I'm not sure whether students realize how much she was in awe of your work, for being so vulnerable with this assignment. It truly gave her so much joy. So for those of you who are here and those of you who are watching, please know that she cherished your work in preparing the next generations of social workers. For a time, Kathy and I would go out for what we called social work happy hour, right? I always look forward to the SWHH in my calendar. This was always enjoyable for me, to get to know her away from PLU. While we would talk about things going on campus, she also talked about her passion and an immense enjoyment in live music, and her pride with having her name on the wall of the restaurant Engine House No. 9, because she had successfully conquered the entire beer list within a year. While she told me that story several times, I pretended as though it was the first time. A couple of times we found ourselves at the Ale House in Fircrest for trivia night. She was a master at trivia, enjoyed the process of elimination to try to figure out what we thought the right answers were, regardless if they were correct or not. Being away from the office showed me how much she enjoyed being with people. For example, both staff and guests would always come over and say hello and to see how she was. In return, she showed genuine interest in them as well. I saw how much she cared about others. There was this thing about Kathy where she made you feel like you were the only one in the room, and she deeply was invested in other people and being as helpful as she could. As you all know, Kathy loved her cats, Dave and Thomas. Not only did she love them, but loved talking about the very typical cat-like behaviors they did. Their antics always amused her, and they were always the topic of so many meetings, and I'm sure in the classroom. She and I would send each other cat memes that we found funny. And being a dog person, she was always happy to share memes where the cats had somehow gotten the upper hand on the dog. She became particularly interested in the porch cats that my partner and I adopted. At one point, she even encouraged me to check their gender. I don't know why, but I said no. I didn't need to know that. Then there was the bird. I don't know if folks know about the bird. A Junco, and for whatever reason, a Junco visited her and her car one spring. Many times she got into her car, there was this bird perched on her passenger window, looking at its reflection in the mirror. And Kathy was at a loss for why this was happening. Then she was even more curious when apparently the same bird appeared the following spring, along with a text that read, "It's back." Kathy had taken a picture so that I could see what this bird was doing. But like many things, Kathy welcomed this repeat visitor with curiosity, with amusement, and a little bit of despair. It didn't bother her per se, but in Kathy's way, she was just observing and trying to understand what the bird's intent was. How come it had returned to her car and why it selected her? She didn't do anything to shoo it away, at least she didn't tell me, but was just simply curious about its presence. I love that Kathy believed social workers were troublemakers, encouraged folks and students to push the envelope. Kathy was kind, generous, and warm-hearted. She was passionate about teaching her cats and talking about a determined bird. She was an amazing mentor to me and several others who knew her. She left a lasting impression on the lives of so many. There was always something comforting about being with Kathy. She always seemed to know what to do, and I will miss that. Kathy would have these tear-off calendars every year, and I will miss the day pages that she would leave in my mailbox because she knew that I would think they would be funny. Kathy truly got to know us as people and individuals, who we are and what we liked and disliked, and she made people laugh and enjoyed connecting with others through humor. As Jody and I wrap up our time on stage, we'd like to share with you some of the words that were written to Kathy at the time of her retirement. A couple of years ago, I asked current and former students, colleagues, and friends to write about what they learned from Kathy and how Kathy impacted them personally and professionally. I know we heard from former student Laura Inglis a bit earlier about Kathy's impact on her and her social work career, but Jody and I would like to read a few of the passages that some students wrote about Kathy to demonstrate her lasting impact on them. While we can't read all of them, what you will hear are sort of remnants of sort of the themes that people described. So we're going to take turns. We're going to tag team?
Yeah.
Okay.
Raise and lower the mic.
So the first one I'd like to read is from Megan. She writes, "One of the most memorable times in class was the day you invited your friends with a guitar to demonstrate to us how to create a protest song. It showed that you really cared about teaching and made the classroom fun." Megan went on to write, "I was grateful that you advocated for me to explore my interests in what kind of social work I was interested in. At the time, I felt pressure to work in geriatrics because that is the population my family worked with, but you urged me to think about other populations. Professor Russell, thank you for teaching me and being my career advisor. I enjoyed hearing your experience as a seasoned social worker, working in prison systems and in churches. One thing I will remember about you is your love of cats and your laugh." So picture it. Megan writes, "When you laugh, you lean back and throw your head back, which shows me when you find something funny, it really shows."
And from Sarah, "I think what I gained most from Kathy was her passion for policy and how it can shape, for good or bad, the world around us. I have found myself drawn to professional roles that allow me to impact systems and policies, and I attribute my first glimpse at seeing those connections and fostering that passion to Kathy. I love the way she challenged us to think critically and always push us beyond what we thought we were capable of. She was very supportive of me applying to grad school for my MSW, which was a big deal since neither of my parents had their undergrad degree, let alone a master's. She made me not only feel like it was possible, but that I was capable. Without her support, I'm not sure if I would have gone to grad school. I owe so much to her and the whole social work department at PLU for the path that led me to where I'm at today.
A student briefly wrote, Dr. Russell has influenced me to choose a more macro path in my social work journey and to never be afraid to challenge my own assumptions.
Okay. And from Kara, one time during our seminar class, I was sharing my experience with consistently having strangers randomly coming up to me and talking to me, and I couldn't figure out why. I have always remembered Dr. Russell's response, which was that she too had experienced those same moments consistently and attributed it to making eye contact. She wondered aloud if she should be making less eye contact, less smiling at people, and then said, "But I don't think I want to live in a world where I don't look people in the eyes and smile at them." Since then, I have embraced the experiences of having random people approaching me in public or at work because Dr. Russell was absolutely right. The world is better when we smile at people, make eye contact, and show them that they are seen.
And Allie wrote, my sophomore year, I decided to major in social work. At the time, I wasn't quite sure of what I was getting myself into, and we never do. Professor Russell was the first person I talked to when I switched my major. I remember her giving all the information about social work and how I could still work with children. I am grateful for her always answering my questions when I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. Professor Russell impacted my life personally and professionally by her care for policy and advocacy. As I took classes from her, I was inspired by the way her passion for policy was coupled with advocacy in this work. She wanted us to learn to teach our future clients the importance of using their voice to tell their story, that each of us has a responsibility to speak up for injustice and to teach our clients to do the same. Allie continues to say that Kathy instilled in her that if we want to change, it isn't something we wait for, we take action. Allie concludes by saying, I hope you know that what you did in your career and what you brought to this profession has changed the way students look at our work. Thank you for your dedication to the PLU Social Work Department, as I know it has paved the way for so many.
And finally, Emily writes, my favorite parts of Kathy's teaching were when she would reminisce about her days as a mediator for church communities. I was always amazed that she could willingly go into a room of people that were so hostile towards each other and patiently and painstakingly help them to talk it out and work towards solutions. It was clear that she was very good at her job. She challenged me to look at the bigger picture and to see things from the point of view of the other side. Thank you so much for your work at PLU. You have helped create generations of social workers who pair ethics with empathy, critical thinking with compassion, and are empowered to seek justice and lift up individuals while working to build better systems that will benefit us all.
I mentioned earlier that Kathy would stop on her way up to her office, get her mail, and then open it at my desk, and we would talk. And some of the things we talked about were some of the things you've already heard about this evening, her cats and her students. And the other thing we talked about often was our shared faith and how we expressed our spirituality. And one of the authors that Kathy really liked was Anne Lamott. And so for the second reading, I chose an excerpt from Anne Lamott's 12 Truths About Life and Writing. And this is from the 12th truth, which is death. Death sucks, and it's holy. Wow, and yikes. It's so hard to bear when the few people you cannot live without die. You will never get over these losses, and no matter what the culture says, you're not supposed to. We Christians like to think of death as a major change of address. But in any case, the person will live again fully in your heart if you don't seal it off. Like Leonard Cohen said, there are cracks in everything, and that's how the light gets in. That's how we feel our people again, fully alive. Also, the beloved departed people will make you laugh out loud at the most inconvenient times, and that's the good news. But their absence will also be lifelong and will provide homesickness for you. Grief and friends and time and tears will heal you to some extent. Tears will bathe and baptize and hydrate and moisturize you and the ground upon which you walk. Do you know the first thing that God says to Moses? He says, "Take off your shoes, because this is holy ground," all evidence to the contrary. It's hard to believe, but it's the truest thing I know. When you're older, like myself, you realize death is as sacred as birth. As Ram Dass says, when it's all said and done, we're all really just walking each other home. My 8-year-old grandson asked me, to anyone within earshot, "What's that like, dying?" So I thought I would tell you what I know, because this aspect of reality, this weird, scary aspect of life can just wreck everything if you don't figure out at some point that it is what makes life so profound, meaningful, rich, complex, and wild. If you try to outrun this existential truth with manic achievement and people-pleasing and exotic distractions, it begins to argue a wasted life. Again, we Christians see death as just being a fairly significant change of address. But still, our most cherished people will no longer be here to have and to hold or to reach by phone. This can kind of ruin everything. When my son was little, he asked if we would die at the same moment. And when I said no, probably not, he wept and then said, "If I'd known that, I wouldn't have agreed to be born." But in both cases, birth and death, something beautiful is coming. I think that's it, but if I think of anything else, I'll let you know. Now I'd like to invite Kathy's cousin, Mr. Dave Zumeta, to come and share a few words.
My name is Dave Zumeta. My brother Bill came here from Seattle, and I came here from Minneapolis to celebrate the life of our cousin Kathy Russell. A few weeks ago, I was in my front yard in South Minneapolis, and some neighbors came by, and there was a young woman with them. She was a young black woman, probably in her late 20s or early 30s. And we got to talking, and it turns out she was from Portland, Oregon, but she had gone to Pacific Lutheran University. And I said, oh, I have a cousin who just recently died who was a professor at Pacific Lutheran University. And she said, and I said, she was Kathy Russell. And she said, oh, I had her my freshman year. She was a really nice lady and a good professor. And I said, how can this happen, that this person's walking down the street? And she went to Pacific Lutheran University, and she had my cousin, Kathy Russell, as a professor. So I guess that's part of why I'm here. In our youth, my brother Bill and I and our families and Kathy celebrated many Thanksgivings together at Kathy's maternal grandparents' house in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is south central Pennsylvania. Kathy's maternal grandmother, Elsie, and Bill's and my paternal grandmother, Bertha, were sisters. Elsie had a single child, Sarah. That's Kathy's mother, Sarah. And Kathy also was an only child. And Bertha only had a single child, Bert. That's Bill's and my father. During college, our father, Bert, lived with Sarah and her mother and father, which was Bert's Aunt Elsie and Uncle George. And Sarah was in high school, and my father was in college, and they spent several years together. It was like they were quasi-sister and brother, living together through the end of the Depression on the eve of World War II. Kathy's father, Bob Russell, was a salesman. And not surprisingly, her mother, Sarah, was a music teacher. So it's very interesting to hear about Kathy inviting you all in to help teach classes, and thank you for your gifts of music today. Kathy's parents both loved music. It's part of the story of how they met. And this was clearly a love that Kathy shared throughout her life. Her parents also instilled in her a passion for education. Kathy followed in her mother's career path, becoming a gifted teacher. As we've heard, in her case, a social welfare professor. By her mid-30s, Kathy's maternal grandparents and her parents had all died, leaving her bereft. Kathy moved to Nebraska. She was a social welfare professor or social work professor at Kearney State University for about 10 years. In the 1990s, Kathy and I visited each other a number of times, me to Nebraska, she to visit my wife and children in Minneapolis. She and I shared a commitment to wildlife habitat protection. She loved watching migrant sandhill cranes on the Platte River and taking trips to remote landscapes in Nebraska and Colorado and Wyoming to take photographs. Photography was another of Kathy's passion, as were cats, as was chocolate, as were various other things that we've heard about earlier. Kathy dearly loved her house cats. Kathy also cared deeply about people. During her time in Nebraska and her first few years here in Tacoma, she helped Episcopal congregations that were in crisis due to sexual abuse. She advised Episcopal bishops across the country with respect to these kind of very challenging issues. Other speakers today have described Kathy's many contributions to Pacific Lutheran University and to this broader community here, so I won't recount those again. When Kathy was a child and a teenager, she was especially close to her grandmother, Elsie. One of Kathy's friends recently told me that Kathy's conception of God was being held in her grandmother Elsie's loving arms. Kathy, I hope that that is where you are now, embraced by eternal love.
Thank you, Dave. I'm not Cass Hartnett, who's mentioned in the order of service. She was unable to be here today. But I'm going to take her place as best I can. I'm Bill Zumeta, as David said, Kathy's second cousin. I'll be sharing a reading from the book of Psalms, the ancient prayer book for Jews and Christians, Psalm 139, which happens also to be a favorite of our mother, who was also a favorite person of Kathy's. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. That I know very well. Amen.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Following the blessing, we are invited again to hear from Dr. Paul Tegels on the organ. And after that, you are invited to gather outside the lobby doors to enjoy some chocolate, Kathy's favorite, and not beer, but coffee and water. And we hope that over that time of gathering outside that you might continue conversations and stories and remembrances of Kathy. Receive this blessing, written by Ruth Burgess. May the blessing of God surround us. May angels and friends share our journey. May we be safeguarded, loved, and cherished. May we walk on holy ground. May people of faith inspire us. May wisdom and justice empower us. May we be wise and strong and creative. May we celebrate life and hope. May God's image grow within us. May laughter and courage heal us. May the gospel of light sustain us all the days of our journey home. Amen.